The chamber shuddered as High Chancellor Varen Quor slammed his coiled tail against the dais, the sound ricocheting off the curved walls like a whip crack slicing through stale air. "Order!" he hissed. His scales caught the pulsing glow, flashing briefly in the light, of laser plasma displays suspended above the unified Galactic Council. The scent of damp moss and sour pheromones wafted from Minister Ulvek Tor, who swayed in agitation, his fronds trembling as he tried to project calm through chemical signals humans couldn't even detect. Grand Arbiter Threx Volm loomed at the far end, his chitin-plated arms crossed, exoskeleton grinding faintly as he shifted, a sound like pebbles tumbling down a dry ravine. "We cannot delay!" Varen's voice slithered through the room, sharp and sibilant, his forked tongue flickering. "The Orion Rift Station is compromised. Experiments of catastrophic potential, graviton destabilizers, antimatter catalysts are in unknown hands. Whoever seized it could unravel entire systems." "And yet," Threx rumbled, his deep timbre vibrating the floor, "we lack consensus. Negotiation could preserve the station. Reckless assault might destroy it, and us." His compound eyes glinted, reflecting the crimson alerts flashing across the heads-up displays. Ulvek's leaves rustled as he exhaled a bitter scent, his words slow and deliberate. "We must investigate first. Assemble a delegation. Ascertain intent." His tendrils curled inward, as if shielding himself from the rising tension. In the midst of this cacophony, Ambassador Dane Callum leaned back in his chair, boots propped on the edge of the council table, an act that made Varen's scales bristle. The human swirled a steaming mug of coffee, its earthy aroma cutting through the alien miasma like a blade through fog. He took a sip, lips curling into a lopsided grin as the bitter liquid scalded his tongue, and muttered, "You lot really know how to turn a crisis into a seminar." Varen's head snapped toward him, pupils narrowing to slits. "Your silence on this matter is noted, Callum. Does humanity have no stake in this disaster?" "Oh, I've got a stake," Callum replied, setting the mug down with a soft clink. "Just wondering how long it'll take you to agree on what hijacking even means. I'd hate to interrupt the poetry of bureaucracy." His tone dripped with mockery, but his gray eyes stayed steady, unblinking, tracking every twitch in the room. The chamber pressed close, laden not with moisture, but with the burden of indecision. Beyond the curved windows, the galaxy sprawled in silence, stars winking like predators' eyes against the void. Inside, the council drowned in its own protocols, a beast choking on its own tail. The Orion Rift Station, a jagged silhouette of alloy and secrets, had gone dark 3 cycles ago. Its last transmission, a garbled burst of static and a single word, "Intruders," now haunted the displays, looping endlessly. Threx leaned forward, his shadow swallowing half the table. "We've dispatched probes. They'll reach the rift in 4 rotations. Until then, we deliberate." 4 rotations? Callum chuckled, a dry sound like wind scraping over gravel. "Bold move. I'm sure the intruders are quaking in their boots, waiting for your drones to RSVP." Varen's tail lashed again, splintering the edge of the dais. "If you've a better suggestion, human, enlighten us." Callum shrugged, stretching his arms until his joints popped, a casual defiance that made Ulvek's fronds droop. "Me? I'm just here for the coffee. You're the ones with the fancy titles." He nodded toward a junior aide scuttling past, balancing a tray of nutrient pods. "Though I'd wager that kid could have stormed the station faster than your committees can vote." The aide froze, mandibles clicking nervously, then hurried away. A ripple of unease passed through the lesser delegates, beings of fur, feathers, and gas-filled bladders, each whispering in their native tongues. The humans' flippancy gnawed at them, a thorn in the fabric of their carefully woven decorum. Beyond the council's walls, the galaxy didn't pause. On a distant asteroid, Director Malric Vos, stood in a shadowed command hub, his breath fogging briefly in the chilled air before vanishing. His fingers danced over a console, summoning feeds from the Orion Rift. Grainy visuals of the station's outer hull, now marred by unfamiliar docking clamps. The tang of recycled oxygen stung his nostrils as he murmured into a comm, "Taver, status." A voice crackled back, low and steady, laced with the faint hiss of a stealth suit's filters. "Inside. Perimeter's a mess. Sloppy welds, rushed defenses. They're amateurs with deep pockets." Voss's lips barely moved. "Keep it quiet. We're the ghosts they'll never see." Back in the chamber, Varen pressed on, oblivious. "We'll convene a security quorum, draft terms for negotiation. If they refuse, we escalate, cautiously." "Cautiously," Callum echoed, tilting his head as if tasting the word. "That's the spirit. Nothing says we mean business like a strongly worded memo." He fished a data slate from his jacket, its surface scuffed and worn, and began tapping idly, though his fingers moved with a rhythm too deliberate for mere boredom. Threx's claws scraped the table, leaving faint grooves. "Your levity undermines us, Callum." "This is no game." "Isn't it?" The human glanced up, his smirk fading just enough to reveal a glint of steel beneath. "You're all playing checkers while the board's already flipped. Maybe you should wonder why I'm not sweating." The room stilled. Ulvek's pheromones shifted, a sharp tang of curiosity cutting through his usual calm. Varen's tail coiled tighter, and Threx's eyes narrowed, searching Callum's face for a crack that wasn't there. Outside, the stars burned on, indifferent to the council's floundering, a silent audience to a drama they couldn't yet comprehend. Across the galaxy, Commander Ryland Taver crouched in the station's shadowed ducts, the air thick with the sour reek of unwashed bodies and overheated circuits. His gloved hand brushed a conduit, its surface warm and pulsing like a living thing. He adjusted his visor, the display painting the darkness in shades of green, and whispered to his team, "First relays ahead. Cut it, and they'll choke before they know we're here." A faint nod from his shadow, a soldier whose name didn't matter, confirmed the plan. The trap was set, a noose tightening in silence. Back in the chamber, Callum sipped his coffee again, the steam curling upward like a signal flare no one else could read. The council bickered on, blind to the jaws closing around their crisis, their words a dull roar against the quiet storm humanity had already unleashed. The galaxy spun, and the predators waited. "Move, damn it! Seal the breach!" Rek Vondar's voice sliced through the stifling air of the Orion Rift Station's command hub, raw and jagged like a blade dragged over stone. His clawed fingers gripped the edge of a console, knuckles whitening as amber alerts bathed his scarred face in a sickly glow. The bitter tang of sweat and overheated wiring clogged his nostrils, and the faint tremor of the deck beneath his boots sent a shiver up his spine. Around him, his crew scrambled, their shouts bouncing off the reinforced walls, sharp, desperate echoes swallowed by the cavernous space. In the station's shadowed underbelly, Commander Ryland Taver crouched beside a thrumming power conduit, its surface slick with condensation that chilled his gloved fingertips. The air down here reeked of burnt insulation and stale rations, a sourness that clung to the back of his throat. His visor's heads-up display flickered, painting the cramped tunnel in ghostly shades of jade. "Relays live," he murmured into his comm, voice steady as a heartbeat. "Cutting it now." A shadow shifted beside him, his second, a wiry figure named Kale, whose breath rasped faintly through her mask's filters. She slid a slender tool into the conduit's access panel, and with a twist, the lights overhead stuttered. A distant groan rolled through the station, like a beast, waking from slumber as oxygen pumps faltered in the hijacker's barracks. Taver's lips twitched, a ghost of a smirk. "Let's see how they dance without air." Back in the unified Galactic Council chamber, High Chancellor Varen Quar's scales shimmered with irritation, catching the flicker of laser plasma displays overhead. The room buzzed with overlapping voices, hisses, clicks, and warbling trills as delegates argued over jurisdiction. The scent of Ulvector's anxiety wafted through, a sharp, citrusy sting that made Callum's nose wrinkle as he lounged at the table's edge, one leg dangling. He swirled his coffee, now lukewarm, its earthy bite dulled, but still potent enough to ground him amid the alien clamor. "We need a unified stance," Varen insisted, his tail coiling restlessly, brushing the floor with a sound like sand shifting. "I propose a committee to draft our terms. Swiftly, decisively." "Swiftly?" Callum tilted his head, voice dry as cracked leather. "What's that mean in your world? 2 cycles or 20? I'm just trying to figure out when you'll settle on what piracy looks like." He tapped his data slate, the rhythm of his fingers a quiet counterpoint to the chaos. Grand Arbiter Threx Volm's claws flexed, scraping the table with a sound like bone on slate. "Your jests tire me, human. This is no trivial theft." Callum met his gaze, unflinching. "Oh, I'd say it's a damn sight bigger than that. But you're still arguing over the guest list while the house burns down." He took a sip, the liquid sloshing faintly, and let the silence stretch, a taut wire begging to snap. On the station, Vondar slammed a fist against the console, the dull thud swallowed by a sudden chorus of gasps from his crew. "Oxygen's dropping in Sector C!" a technician barked, voice cracking as he jabbed at a flickering display. The air grew thin, a faint wheeze threading through the vents as the system choked. Vondar's chest heaved, each breath shallower, the taste of panic souring his tongue. "Fix it! Reroute the reserves!" Another hijacker, a wiry figure with twitching antennae, darted to a secondary panel. "Logs are gone! Wiped clean!" His words tumbled out, high and frantic as his hands fumbled over dead controls. "We can't track what's hitting us!" Vondar's eyes narrowed, his scales prickling with unease. "Sabotage," he growled, the word a low rumble in his throat. "Someone's inside." He turned, scanning the dim chamber, shadows stretching like claws across the walls. The flicker of failing lights played tricks on his vision. Was that movement in the corner, or just the station dying around him? In the ducts, Taver watched the chaos unfold through a hacked feed, the grainy visuals dancing across his visor. The hijackers milled like ants in a flooded nest, their shouts muffled but sharp enough to sting his ears through the thin walls. Kale slid beside him, her movements fluid as oil over glass. "Data's scrubbed," she whispered, her voice a thread of steel. "They're blind now." "Good," Taver replied, adjusting his grip on a compact device pulsing with faint heat. "Next step, keep them guessing." He nodded toward a junction ahead, where coolant lines snaked through the gloom, their surfaces beaded with frost that glittered like a predator's teeth. Back in the council, Ulvector swayed, his fronds curling inward as he exhaled a tart wave of frustration. "We must signal the station, demand their intent," he urged, his voice soft but insistent, like wind through dry reeds. Varen nodded, his tongue flicking. "Agreed. A transmission, formal and binding. They'll see reason." Callum snorted, setting his mug down with a soft clack. "Reason? You're betting on pirates who stole a doomsday lab to sit down for tea and treaties. That's a hell of a gamble." He leaned forward, elbows on the table, his casual drawl sharpening. "Ever think they're not waiting for your permission to break everything?" Threx's exoskeleton creaked as he shifted, a low grind that set teeth on edge. "And what would you do, human? Charge in blindly?" "Nah," Callum said, his grin returning, sly and unreadable. "I'd just make sure they never see me coming." His words hung there, light as smoke but heavy with something unspoken, a spark flickering in the dark. On the station, Vondar barked orders, his crew scrambling to patch the oxygen flow. A faint hiss seeped from the vents as reserves kicked in, but the relief was fleeting. In the flickering gloom, a shadow darted, too quick to catch, and a coolant line ruptured with a sharp crack, spraying frigid mist across a storage bay. Shouts turned to curses as the hijackers slipped on the spreading ice, their breaths clouding in the sudden chill. Tavor's voice cut through the calm, low and deliberate. "They're rattled. Push the next play." Kale nodded, her silhouette vanishing into the haze, a phantom threading through the station's veins. Above them, the hijackers stumbled, blind and breathless, while the council debated on, their voices a distant roar against the tightening noose of humanity's unseen war. "Shift left, now!" Commander Ryland Tavor's voice cut through the calm, a hushed blade slicing the stillness as he pressed himself against the station's inner hull. The air in the maintenance shaft hung heavy, thick with the greasy tang of lubricant and the faint, sour whiff of rusting bolts. His boots grazed the grated floor, sending a shiver of vibration up his legs, while his visor's heads-up display cast the narrow passage in a spectral wash of emerald. Ahead, a security drone whirred past, its lenses swiveling, fooled by a looped feed Kale had spliced into the system moments ago. She slithered beside him, her silhouette a flicker in the gloom, breath steady despite the cramped quarters. "Patrols rerouted," she murmured, her tone clipped, efficient, like a tool honed for purpose. Her fingers danced over a handheld device, its faint glow warming her gloves as she bent the station's eyes to their will. The distant clatter of hijacker boots faded, lured toward a decoy breach 2 sectors away. Tavor nodded, his gaze locking on a vent overhead, its slats caked with dust that tickled his nose. "Target's close. Engineers in the relay hub. We take him quiet." He eased upward, muscles coiling, and pried the cover loose with a faint scrape, like a whisper against stone. The shaft beyond yawned dark and tight, promising a chokehold of shadows. In the station's flickering heart, Rek Vondar prowled the command hub. His scales flared under the stuttering lights, sharp and defiant. The air tasted of ash and fear, a dryness that scraped his throat as he barked, "Status on the coolant leak!" His crew flinched at his roar, their movements jerky, like prey scattering from a snap of jaws. A technician, a lanky figure with trembling claws, tapped at a console, the keys clacking unevenly. "Pumps are holding. Barely. Something's off with the relays." "Off?" Vondar's tail coiled, cracking against a crate with a dull thud. "Find it, or I'll carve the answer out of you." His eyes darted to the walls, where shadows danced. Too many, too fleeting. The station groaned around him, a beast bleeding out, and the weight of unseen eyes pressed against his skull. Above, Tavor squeezed through the vent, the walls brushing his shoulders with a chill that seeped through his suit. The faint drip of condensation echoed, a rhythm like a faltering pulse as he emerged into the relay hub. The room buzzed with energy, its air sharp with the bite of overheated circuits. A lone hijacker engineer hunched over a panel, his back to them, muttering in a guttural tongue as he wrestled with a tangle of wires. The tang of solder lingered, a faint haze curling from his tools. Kyle slipped in behind, silent as a shadow stretching at dusk. Tavor gestured, a sharp flick of his wrist, and she flanked right, her steps muffled by the hum of straining machinery. He edged closer, each breath measured, tasting the engineer's sweat in the air. The man's head tilted, antennae twitching as if sensing a shift, but Tavor was faster. His arms snaked out, locking around the engineer's throat, a vice of flesh and intent. A muffled choke escaped, cut short as Kale drove a slender blade between ribs. Clean, silent, final. The body slumped, and Tavor eased it to the floor, arranging it to look like a slip, a spilled tool, a tripped cable. The faint clink of the blade retracting rang in his ears, a note of closure. "One down," he whispered, voice a thread of steel. "Rig the panel, make it sing a lie." Kale knelt, her hands swift as she tampered with the controls. A spark flared, its brief light searing his vision, and the panel's display blinked out, replaced by a false read. Pressure stable, systems green. The space weighed down, the machinery's whine fading into a hush, as if lulled into a false calm. In the hub, Vondar's comm crackled, a technician's voice cutting through. "Relay's back online, reading steady." Relief flickered across his face, but it curdled fast. He strode to a storage bay, boots crunching on frost-slicked floors, and froze. A crate lay cracked open, its contents, spare conduits, scattered like bones from a broken ribcage. No footprints, no signs, just chaos left to taunt him. "Who's doing this?" he snarled, his claws flexing as if itching to rend flesh. He turned to his second, a burly figure named Jorak, whose eyes darted nervously. "Check the roster. Someone's turned." Jorak's mandibles clicked, a staccato of doubt. "We've all been here. Watched every move. Maybe it's the station itself. Breaking down." Vondar's glare could have scorched steel. "Stations don't crack crates or wipe logs. We've got a snake in the nest." His voice dropped, a growl that vibrated in his chest. "Find it or I'll start cutting till I do." The crew scattered, suspicion thickening the air like smoke. A junior hijacker lingered, his breath fogging as he muttered to another, "He's losing it. We're chasing ghosts." The words drifted, unnoticed by Vondar, but they sowed a seed, doubt curling like roots through dry soil. Tavor watched from a shadowed perch, the feed from a planted lens dancing across his visor. The hijackers turned inward, their shouts jagged with mistrust, a pack unraveling at the seams. "They're biting each other already," he said, his tone dry as dust. "Herd them deeper. Corridor 7's the choke point." Kale nodded, slipping a device into a wall slot. A subtle trap, its faint warmth pulsing against her palm. "They'll run right into it," she replied, her words a promise carved in shadow. The station trembled faintly, a shudder like a beast sensing its end, as Task Force Vulture tightened the noose, not just striking, but steering their prey into a labyrinth of their own making. The lights dimmed, casting the hub in a twilight glow, and Vondar's roar echoed, a hunter blind to the jaws closing around him. The game was shifting, and the board tilted beneath his feet. "Send the signal! Blast it through every channel!" Rek Vondar's roar tore through the Orion Rift Station's command hub, his voice a ragged edge scraping against the flickering silence. The air stung with the sharp bite of burnt wiring and the sour reek of unwashed scales, his crew's breaths fogging in the dim light as they hunched over failing consoles. His claws gouged the armrest of his chair, leaving curling shavings, while the faint shudder of the station pulsed through his boots, a heartbeat faltering under strain. A technician, eyes wide with panic, jabbed at a comm panel, its surface warm and slick with sweat. "Nothing's going out! Lines are dead!" His words cracked, brittle as frost, as static hissed from the speakers, a white noise that clawed at their ears. Vondar whirled, tail slamming the deck with a thud that rattled loose bolts. "Force it! Punch through to Dahl! Tell him we're bleeding here!" His chest heaved, the taste of ash coating his tongue as he scanned the shadows, empty yet suffocating with unseen menace. In the unified Galactic Council chamber, High Chancellor Varen Quar's scales gleamed under the pulsing glow of laser plasma displays, his tongue flicking with restrained urgency. The air carried Ulvek Tor's tart, citrusy scent, a nervous wave that prickled Ambassador Dane Callum's skin as he slouched at the table, cradling a fresh mug of coffee. Its steam coiled upward, earthy and bitter, a tether to calm amid the alien din. "We've dallied long enough," Varen declared, his voice slithering through the room like oil over glass. "I move we deploy an investigative force, 3 cycles to assemble, then we assess the rift." Grand Arbiter. Threx Volm's exoskeleton rasped as he nodded, a sound like twigs snapping underfoot. "And I'll draft terms, leniency for surrender. We can salvage this without bloodshed." His compound eyes glinted, reflecting the crimson alerts overhead. Callum tilted his head, lips curling as he took a slow sip, the liquid scalding his throat with a welcome sting. Investigate? Terms? That's some audacious footwork, standing still while the galaxy spins. His tone danced with mockery, light but barbed, as he set the mug down with a faint clink and pulled a data slate from his jacket. Its screen glowed faintly, a secret pulse beneath his fingers. Varen's tail twitched, brushing the dais with a hiss. "Your cynicism offers no solutions, human. What would you have us do?" "Oh, I'm just marveling at the artistry," Callum replied, his grin widening, sly as a fox circling a snare. "You're painting a masterpiece of hesitation. Future generations'll frame it." He tapped the slate, eyes flicking to its contents. A classified feed the Council couldn't dream of accessing. Across the galaxy, Director Malric Voss stood in his asteroid command hub, the air chilled and tasting of recycled frost. His breath misted briefly as he leaned over a console, its keys clicking under his steady hands. A heads-up display flared to life, streaming garbled intercepts from the station. "They're reaching out," he muttered, voice low and unyielding, like stone settling into place. "Time to feed them a ghost." His fingers flew, weaving a false signal into the Council's networks. A jagged burst claiming a Threxian war fleet was massing at the rift's edge, weapons primed. The lie slithered through the ether, a venomous thread meant to coil around Vondar's desperation. On the station, a comm officer jolted, claws scraping the panel as a distorted message crackled through. "Incoming! Threxian signatures! They're closing fast!" His voice trembled, a reed bending in a gale, as the crew's shouts erupted, jagged with fear. Vondar's scales bristled, his snarl reverberating off the walls. "Threxians? Here!" Dahl swore they'd stall the Council. He lunged to the display, its flickering light searing his vision, and barked, "Get me a line to the Baron, now!" The technician fumbled, hands shaking as he punched commands into the dead system. "Still nothing. Channels are choked." His breath hitched, fogging the air as the station groaned, a deep shudder rippling through the deck. In the chamber, Ulvector swayed, his fronds curling as he exhaled a sharp, anxious scent. "We must broadcast our intent, show we're not the aggressors," he urged, voice soft but taut, like a vine stretched to breaking. Callum chuckled, a dry rasp that cut through the tension. "Broadcast? Sure, let 'em know you're coming with a polite knock. Maybe bring a fruit basket, too." He leaned back, slate balanced on his knee, its glow catching the edge of his smirk. "Wonder how long they'll laugh before they shred it." Threx's claws flexed, grinding against the table with a sound like shale splitting. "Enough, human. We act with reason, not your reckless flair." "Reason's a fine shield," Callum shot back, his voice sharpening, a blade unsheathed. "Hope it holds when they stop playing nice." His eyes flicked to the slate again, a flicker of satisfaction dancing there, unseen, unfelt by the Council's lumbering minds. On the station, Vondar's comm flared with static, then a faint, garbled plea slipped through, his own distress call mirrored back. "Baron Hesric Dole, we're under attack. Send aid!" The words echoed, a desperate howl swallowed by silence as the signal looped, mocking him. In the asteroid hub, Voss watched the trap snap shut, his lips a thin line. "They've bitten," he said into his comm, the words cold as the void outside. "Tavor, tighten the net." Deep within the station's ducts, Tavor crouched, the air thick with the damp chill of leaking pipes. His visor glowed, tracking the hijacker's frantic scramble. "They're running blind," he replied, voice a murmur against the drip of water. "Corridor 7's primed, let's funnel them in." Beside him, Kale adjusted a device, its faint heat pulsing against her palm, a lure disguised as salvation. The council debated on, their voices a dull roar, while Vondar's crew stumbled toward ruin, chased by phantoms of humanity's design. The galaxy tilted, and the predators grinned in the dark. "Shut it down. Now!" Commander Rylan Tavor's command sliced through the comm, urgent yet steady, as he crouched in the Orion Rift Station's shadowed core. The surroundings grew dense with the damp chill of leaking coolant, its faint hiss a serpent's whisper against the walls. His gloved hand brushed a control node, its surface slick and pulsing with residual heat, while his visor's heads-up display flared, mapping the station's faltering veins in shades of amber. Beside him, Kale's fingers darted over a portable rig, her breath fogging briefly in the dim light as she triggered the override. A deep groan shuddered through the deck, the life support systems choking for 30 agonizing seconds. The faint whine of air pumps died, replaced by a suffocating stillness that pressed against Tavor's ears. He tasted the dryness creeping into his throat, a grit that sharpened his focus as the trap sprang. In the command hub, Rake Vondar staggered, his roar cut short as the air thinned. The tang of sweat and fear soured his tongue, his scales prickling under the flickering lights. "What's happening?" he bellowed, claws raking a console as his crew gasped, their breaths shallow and ragged. A technician slumped, clutching his chest, while the deck trembled beneath their boots, a beast gasping its last. Across the galaxy, in the unified Galactic Council chamber, Ambassador Dane Callum rose from his seat, the scrape of his chair a quiet thunder against the alien murmur. The air carried Ulvek Tor's sharp, citrusy scent, a nervous wave that tickled Callum's nose as he set his coffee mug down, its earthy warmth fading into the coolness of the room. "I'd like a word," he drawled, voice smooth as a river stone, "if you're not too busy crafting your next delay." High Chancellor Varenquor's tail stilled, his scales catching the glow of laser plasma displays overhead. "Speak, human," he hissed, tongue flicking with guarded curiosity. Callum's lips curved, a half smirk that didn't reach his eyes. "The rift's a mess. Your words, not mine. How about I step in? Mediate this little snag before it unravels everything." His tone lilted, deceptively casual as he adjusted his jacket, the faint rustle of fabric a counterpoint to the tension coiling around him. "Grand Arbiter." Threx Volm's claws tapped the table, a rhythm like rain on shale. "Mediation?" His voice rumbled, skeptical but intrigued. "You've been silent too long to play peacemaker now." "Maybe I've just been listening," Callum replied, stepping toward the Crisis Response Center's console, his boots clicking softly. "Give me the reins. I'll sort it." His gray eyes glinted, a predator's gleam masked by charm. Varen nodded, a reluctant dip of his head. "Very well. Full access. Prove your worth." The council murmured, a chorus of doubt and hope, as Callum slid into the center's chair, its surface cool against his palms. Far beyond, in the black between stars, Baron Hezric Dole paced a sleek vessel, its air crisp with the sterile bite of filtered oxygen. His robes swished, a faint whisper against the deck, as he glared at a comm screen flickering with static. "Vondar's flailing," he snarled, his voice a velvet blade. "Send the mercenaries. Crush this before the council wakes up." His aide, a wiry figure with darting eyes, tapped commands, dispatching a fleet of hired fangs to the rift. What Dahl didn't see? Human warships lurking in the void, their hulls dark as night's underbelly. Silent cannons flared, a brief flash swallowed by the abyss, and the mercenary vessels erupted into debris, shards glinting like scattered teeth. The faint tremor of their destruction rippled through the vacuum, unheard, unfelt by their sender. Back on the station, the life support kicked in with a jolt, air rushing through vents with a harsh gasp. Vondar steadied himself, chest heaving as oxygen flooded back, its cool rush a balm to his burning lungs. "Status!" he barked, voice raw as his crew stumbled to their feet. No response from Dole, a technician croaked, hands trembling over the comm. Reinforcements should have signaled by now. Vondar's eyes narrowed, a storm brewing behind them. "They're gone," he growled, the realization sinking like a stone in his gut. "We're alone." In the chamber, Callum's fingers danced over the console, summoning a feed that bathed the room in grainy light. The council leaned forward, Ulvek's fronds quivering, Threx's exoskeleton creaking as footage unspooled, Task Force Vulture slipping through ducts, sabotaging relays, neutralizing threats with surgical grace. The hijackers' chaos played out, a dance of shadows and ruin, all under humanity's unseen hand. Varen's tail tucked, cracking the dais. "What is this?" His hiss cut through the stunned silence, sharp as shattered glass. Callum leaned back, crossing his arms, the chair creaking faintly beneath him. That's us fixing your problem while you debated seating charts." His voice stayed light, but a chill threaded through it, a wind over frozen ground. "No external forces coming, because we already handled it." Threx's claws dug into the table, leaving faint grooves. "You acted without sanction, against protocol." His roar vibrated the air, a thunderclap of outrage. "Protocol!" Callum's grin sharpened, a blade unsheathed. "I'd rather sleep at night than drown in your rule book." He tapped the console again, freezing the feed on Tavor's silhouette, a ghost in the dark, poised to strike. Ulvek's pheromones shifted, a sour tang of disbelief. "You've been orchestrating this? Since when?" His voice wavered, a leaf trembling in a gale. Callum shrugged, sipping his coffee once more, its bitterness a quiet triumph. "Long enough to know you'd never see it coming." His words hung there, a noose tightening around the council's pride. On the station, Tavor's comm crackled, Voss's voice filtering through. "They're boxed in. Finish it." Tavor nodded, his visor glowing as he descended a ladder, the air growing thick with the stale reek of trapped prey. The hijackers milled below, blind to the jaws snapping shut, while the council reeled, their illusion of control shattering like ice under a hammer. The galaxy held its breath, and humanity's shadow stretched longer. "Fan out! End this!" Commander Ryland Tavor's order snapped through the comm, a whip crack in the Orion Rift station's suffocating gloom. The air reeked of charred circuits and spilled blood, a bitter tang that coated his tongue as he vaulted over a shattered crate. His boots slammed the deck, sending a jolt up his spine while his visor's heads-up display blazed, painting the corridor in stark crimson. Shadows lunged, hijackers, desperate and cornered, their roars a jagged chorus against the walls. Kale darted left, her blade flashing as she met a hulking figure mid-charge. The clash rang out, a sharp chime of steel kissing bone, and the foe crumpled, his breath gurgling into silence. Tavor spun right, his rifle spitting suppressed bursts, each shot a muffled cough that punched through armor, leaving the scent of singed fabric curling in the air. The station trembled, its groans a dying beast's lament, as Task Force Vulture carved through the last resistance. In the Unified Galactic Council chamber, High Chancellor Varen Quar's Ty-El moved, splintering the dais with a crack that echoed like thunder. The air thickened with Ulvek Tor's sour, panicked scent, a wave that stung Ambassador Dane Callum's nostrils as he leaned against the crisis console, arms crossed. The laser plasma displays flickered, still looping footage of humanity's unseen dance. Sabotage, strikes, control seized without a whisper to the council. "Under whose authority did you act?" Varen's hiss sliced the room. His scales gleamed faintly under the pulsing light, subdued yet striking. His tongue darted, tasting the tension as his eyes bored into Callum. The human tilted his head, a slow grin spreading, lazy yet lethal as a cat stretching before a pounce. "Under the authority of common sense," he said, voice smooth and unhurried, like a river wearing down stone. He straightened, brushing a speck of dust from his jacket, the faint rustle a taunt in the stillness. "You were busy arguing over ink and seals. I figured someone should actually do something." Grand Arbiter Threx Volm's claws gouged the table, a grinding scrape that set teeth on edge. "This is anarchy." His roar vibrated the floor, a landslide of outrage. "You've mocked our sovereignty." Callum's grin didn't waver, but his eyes hardened, glinting like flint. "Sovereignty's a fine word. Means nothing when your house is burning and you're still picking curtains." He tapped the console, its surface cool against his fingertips, and let the footage roll, a silent testament to humanity's grip. On the station, Taver kicked a door aside, its hinges shrieking as it crashed against the wall. The air rushed in, heavy with the coppery sting of blood and the faint whiff of sweat-soaked fear. Rag Vondar stood amid the wreckage, scales dulled by grime, his chest heaving as he swung a jagged blade. "You'll choke on this," he snarled, lunging with a predator's grace. Taver sidestepped, the blade's edge whistling past his ear, and drove his elbow into Vondar's jaw, a crack like splitting wood. The hijacker staggered, tail thrashing, but Kale was there, her boot slamming his knee with a wet snap. He fell, roaring, and Taver's rifle barked once. Final. Unyielding silence settled, broken only by the faint drip of coolant from a ruptured line, its chill kissing the deck. "Station's ours," Taver said into his comm, voice steady as he wiped a smear of blood from his glove, the warmth fading fast. His visor dimmed, the fight's heat leaching into the cold reality of victory. In the chamber, Ulvector swayed, his fronds curling inward as he exhaled a tart wave of disbelief. "You've secured it?" His words faltered, soft as a leaf drifting down, his gaze darting to the frozen image of Vondar's collapse. Callum nodded, sipping his coffee, now cold, its bitterness a quiet echo of the moment. "Yep, all wrapped up while you were drafting your next speech." He set the mug down with a soft clack, leaning forward. "But here's the kicker. Those hijackers weren't lone wolves. Check the logs." He swiped the console, pulling up a new feed. Financial trails, snaking through encrypted channels, glowing like veins of fire across the display. Names flashed. Baron Hesric Dole, a council insider, and others tied to the chamber's fringes. The air shifted, a collective intake of breath as the council processed the betrayal woven into their ranks. Varen's tail froze mid-swing, his hiss dying into a choked rasp. "Dahl? He funded this?" His eyes widened, pupils narrowing to slits as the weight sank in. Threx slammed a claw down, the table shuddering under the blow. "Treason! From within!" His voice boomed, a quake of fury and fear, as lesser delegates flinched, their whispers rising like a tide. Callum watched them unravel, his smirk fading into something colder, more deliberate. "Funny how that works," he said, voice low and cutting, a blade slipped between ribs. "You didn't see the knife till it was hilt deep. Maybe next time, look closer." A junior aide scuttled past, mandibles clicking nervously, his tray of nutrient pods rattling as the chamber erupted, shouts, accusations, a cacophony of alien tongues. Ulvec's pheromones spiked, a sharp tang of dread, while Threx's exoskeleton creaked with every tense shift. Varen's gaze darted, searching for control, slipping through his coils. On the station, Tavor surveyed the aftermath, bodies strewn like fallen leaves, the stillness hung heavy with the fading warmth of combat. "Clean up," he ordered, his team moving with quiet efficiency, their boots scuffing the deck in a rhythm of finality. The station stood reclaimed, a silent monument to humanity's reach, untouched by council hands. Callum leaned back, fingers drumming a slow beat on the console, the sound a faint heartbeat in the chaos. The council's world tilted, cracks spidering through their illusions, and the fallout loomed, a shadow cast by predators they'd never truly seen. "Dig deeper! Unearth the rot!" Ambassador Dane Callum's voice rang out, a clear command slicing through the unified Galactic Council chamber's rising clamor. The air buzzed with the sour sting of Ulvector's panic, a scent that clawed at Callum's throat as he stood at the crisis console, its surface cool and unyielding beneath his palms. His boots scuffed the floor, a faint scrape swallowed by the chaos, while laser plasma displays overhead flared with damning evidence. Financial trails glowing like veins of molten ore, threading back to the Council's own ranks. High Chancellor Varen Quar's tail lashed, a whip crack that splintered the dais' edge, sending a shard skittering across the floor. "This is madness," he hissed, scales shimmering under the pulsing light, his tongue darting as if tasting the betrayal in the air. "Dahl! Others! How deep does this treachery run?" Callum swiped the console, pulling up records. Transactions masked as trade deals, rerouted through shell entities, all bearing the fingerprints of Baron Hesric Dole and 3 lesser delegates. The chamber erupted, a cacophony of roars, trills, and clicks, alien voices clashing like waves against a crumbling shore. Threxvolm's claws slammed the table, a thunderous crack that shivered through the deck, his exoskeleton grinding as he bellowed, "We're compromised from within!" A junior aide flinched, his tray of nutrient pods clattering as he retreated to the shadows, mandibles twitching with nervous energy. Ulvec swayed, his fronds drooping as he exhaled a tart wave of despair. "Our trust shattered," he murmured, voice soft as a falling petal, his gaze darting to the glowing trails. Callum leaned forward, elbows resting on the console, his coffee mug abandoned, its earthy warmth replaced by the chill of calculated intent. "Shattered's right," he said, voice low and steady, a river carving through stone. "But here's the thing. You're bleeding, and we've got the tourniquet." He straightened, brushing his jacket with a casual flick, the rustle a quiet underscore to his words. Varen's eyes narrowed, pupils thinning to slits. "What are you proposing, human?" His hiss carried a wary edge, a serpent sizing up a threat. "A fix," Callum replied, his grin returning, sly and unhurried, like a hunter setting a snare. "Your security's a sieve, leaks everywhere. Let us patch it. New protocols, human oversight, key posts to lock it down tight." He tapped the console again, summoning a blueprint. Terran intelligence operatives slotted into galactic choke points, comm relays, trade hubs, defense grids. The plan glowed, a web of control spun with surgical care. Threx's claws flexed, scraping the table with a sound like shale splitting. "You'd seize our reins!" His roar trembled the air, a quake of defiance, but his eyes flickered, doubt creeping in like frost on glass. "Not seize," Callum countered, his tone sharpening, a blade drawn slow and deliberate. "Steer. You're adrift. Someone's got to right the ship before it sinks." He stepped closer, boots clicking, the rhythm a heartbeat in the storm. "We've already proven we can clean your mess. Why not let us keep it from happening again?" The chamber stilled, a brittle pause as the council weighed their unraveling world. Varen's tail coiled, brushing the floor with a faint hiss, while Ulvec's fronds quivered, his pheromones shifting to a bitter tang of resignation. Lesser delegates whispered, their voices a rustling tide, some defiant, others calculating, all tasting the shift in the wind. On the reclaimed station, Commander Rylan Tavor stood amid the silence, the air heavy with the fading warmth of combat and the sharp bite of disinfectant his team sprayed over the deck. His visor dimmed, the heads-up display fading as he surveyed the secured hub, bodies cleared, systems humming under human control. "Perimeters locked," he said into his comm, voice a thread of steel. Ready for the next phase. Director Malric Voss's reply crackled through, cold and unyielding from his asteroid base. Good. Callum's laying the groundwork. Stand by to deploy. The air there chilled his breath, a sterile bite that sharpened his focus as he adjusted a console, weaving Terran agents into the galaxy's arteries. Real-time surveillance, encrypted channels, a shadow network rooted in the chaos humanity had just quelled. Back in the chamber, Callum watched the council fracture, his fingers drumming a slow beat on the console, a predator pacing its kill. Here's how it works, he said, voice rising to cut through the din. We take the comm nexus on Vera 9. Your chatter's been leaking there for cycles. Add a garrison at the rift's edge. Keeps the scavengers out. And a human liaison in every trade council. Stops the credits from wandering into dirty claws again. Each point landed like a stone, dropped into still water, ripples spreading through their stunned ranks. Varen's tongue flicked, his hiss softening into a reluctant murmur. And if we refuse? The question dangled, fragile as a thread. Callum's eyes glinted, a spark in the gray. Then you're gambling on your own shadows, not slitting your throats next time. He leaned back, crossing his arms, the chair creaking faintly. We've shown you the board. Your move. Threx's exoskeleton settled, a low grind as he exhaled, his defiance wilting under the weight of reality. They've outplayed us, he rumbled, voice a landslide slowing to a halt. No choice but to bend. Ulvik nodded, his fronds uncurling slightly, a faint scent of reluctant hope threading the air. A bitter root, but it might grow, he said, words tentative like a vine testing new soil. The vote came swift, a fractured chorus of ayes, grudging and tense as the council ceded ground. Callum's blueprint locked in, a scaffold of human influence rising from the ashes of their failure. He sipped his cold coffee, its bitterness a quiet victory, and murmured to himself, checkmate. The galaxy shifted, power tilting on an axis they'd never seen coming, and humanity's shadow stretched deeper still. Stand down! Let them see! Director Malric Voss's voice cut through the comm, a cold blade honed by intent as he leaned over the asteroid hub's console. The air bit at his lungs, sharp with the sterile chill of recycled oxygen, while his fingers danced across the keys, summoning feeds from the Orion Rift station, now a silent trophy of humanity's grip. His breath fogged briefly, curling in the dim light, as the heads-up display flared, casting his gaunt face in a ghostly wash of amber. Beyond the reinforced viewport, stars glinted like eyes peering through a shroud, bearing witness to the shift unfolding below. In the unified Galactic Council chamber, Ambassador Dane Callum stood at the crisis console, its surface smooth and unyielding beneath his steady hands. The air swirled with Ulvik Tor's tart, resigned scent, a faint prickle against Callum's skin as he watched the chamber settle into an uneasy hush. His boots shifted, scuffing the floor with a soft rasp, while the laser plasma displays overhead glowed with the aftermath. Human agents slotting into galactic veins, a web woven tight and unbreakable. High Chancellor Varen Quar's tail drooped, brushing the dais with a faint whisper, his scales dulled under the pulsing light. We never understood what you were, did we? His hiss trembled, a thread of awe weaving through the exhaustion as his tongue flicked, tasting the bitter truth hanging thick in the room. Callum's lips twitched, a slow grin unfurling, deliberate and chilling, like a wolf baring its fangs after the hunt. You saw us as diplomats playing at war, he said, voice low and resonant, a tide pulling the shore apart. But we were never playing. Each word landed heavy, a stone sinking into deep water, ripples fanning out to drown the Council's illusions. Grand Arbiter Threx Volm's exoskeleton creaked, a low groan as he sank into his seat, claws resting limp on the table. "You've carved us open," he rumbled, his tone a landslide grinding to stillness, compound eyes reflecting the display's crimson glow. Not with claws, but with cunning. Callum stepped forward, the faint clack of his boots a heartbeat in the silence. "Cunning's just the skin we wear," he replied, his gaze sweeping the chamber, gray eyes glinting like steel under moonlight. "Beneath it, we're the ones who move first, who see the cracks before they split." He paused, letting the weight settle, the air growing dense with the scent of cold coffee lingering on his breath. A quiet anchor amid the alien storm. Ulvek swayed, his fronds uncurling slightly, a faint whiff of reluctant clarity threading through his usual tang. "Methodical," he murmured, voice soft as a vine brushing stone. "Not reckless, never reckless." His words drifted, a realization blooming too late, as a junior aide shuffled nearby, his mandibles clicking faintly, unnoticed in the tide of reckoning. Varen's head tilted, his hiss softening into a question that clawed at the air. "Why hide it? Why mask yourselves as this?" His tail gestured weakly toward Callum's casual stance, the jacket slung over his shoulders, the mug abandoned on the console. "Because masks win wars before they start," Callum said, his tone sharpening, a blade slipping free of its sheath. "You watched me sip poison, coffee, capsaicin, laughed at the blunt edges of my words. All the while, we were threading the needle through your chaos." He leaned against the console, its cool edge pressing into his hip, and folded his arms, a predator at ease atop its kill. On the station, Commander Rylan Tavor walked the secured corridors, the air heavy with the fading warmth of combat and the sharp bite of scrubbed floors. His visor dimmed, the heads-up display fading as he paused by a viewport, the galaxy sprawling beyond, stars winking like a predator's gaze mirrored back. "Perimeter's holding," he said into his comm, voice steady as a drawn bow. "They're locked in, nowhere to run." Voss's reply crackled through, a whisper of frost from the asteroid hub. "They've bent. Deploy the garrisons. Vara 9, the rift's edge. Seal the net." His fingers lingered on the console, the keys warm from use, as he watched humanity's shadow stretch, agents slipping into comm relays, trade councils, a silent tide claiming the galaxy's pulse. In the chamber, Threx's claws scraped the table once, a faint echo of resistance fading fast. "You've rewritten the game," he growled, a boulder settling into a riverbed. "We thought ourselves the players. Now we're the board." Callum's grin faded, replaced by a look of quiet steel, unyielding and deep. "Boards don't win. They're just where the pieces fall," he said, voice dropping to a near whisper, a chill threading through the room like frost on glass. "We've been stacking the deck since we walked in. Every joke, every shrug, a move you didn't see." The council sat, a fractured assembly of scales, fronds, and chitin, their breaths uneven, the air thick with the weight of their dawning fear. A lesser delegate, a feathered being with trembling plumes, whispered to another, "They're not like us," his words a faint rustle lost in the tide. Callum turned, gazing out the chamber's curved window, where the galaxy burned in silent witness, stars flickering like embers of a fire humanity had stoked. "You built a machine of talk and trust," he said, his back to them, voice rising like smoke from a smoldering ruin. "We saw the gears, knew where to jam the wrench. That's not chaos, that's control." Varen's tail coiled tight, a final shiver as he exhaled, his hiss a surrender. "Apex," he breathed, the word a wound laid bare. "Predators cloaked in jest." Callum didn't turn, but his shoulders squared, the faint creak of his jacket a closing note. "Call it what you want," he said, each syllable a hammer strike on an anvil. "Just know this. We don't ask for the crown, we take it, and you'll never hear us coming." The chamber fell silent, a tomb sealing shut, as the galaxy beyond shifted, its rhythms now bent to humanity's quiet, surgical will. The council stared, eyes wide, at the man who'd unraveled their world, and the stars outside gleamed sharper, a constellation of predators wearing masks no one had dared to lift.